Welcome back here to the Upskill podcast. I'm super excited that you're tuning in for this amazing episode. I'm sitting virtually in front of Kyle Chasse, who is a master disruptor himself. I've been so excited to organizing this podcast episode for you because, oh boy, we are going to be covering lots of hot topics. The world is changing fast, and Kyle Chasse definitely knows how to make this world change. Great to have you on the Upskill podcast, Kyle Chasse.
Thank you, Dave. Great to be here. Appreciate the invite.
Absolutely. I'm so pumped to have you on the show. I really love your content. I know you've been on a mission for a very, very long time. Your enthusiasm and passion is contagious. That's what I get from all your videos. And, you know, the people out there will see that you are actually building, you're actually changing the world. And, you know, I'm a huge fan of your work and your colleagues, your influencer friends. You say you're a master disruptor. So I'd love to ask you who and what does a master disruptor actually do, and how do they see the world?
You know, I think it was like that's a I guess a play on words on just kind of the parent company, you know, Master Ventures. But like I've always considered myself disruption is the name of the game, right? That's what it is. And that's if you can have successful adoption of a decentralized system, you've essentially disrupted whatever it was that you were trying to do. So that's kind of my goal, is to look at systems that are inefficient and it's my understanding and belief that decentralized systems are far more efficient than legacy systems, and therefore they will eventually disrupt, the legacy systems they're trying to disrupt. And so everything that I've been working on, my time here in blockchain since 2012 has been, focused on the most disruptive and biggest changing types of systems that we absolutely can create. So I focus a lot on infrastructure and seeing, how we can help the space evolve. And then also like what are the most inefficient systems in the space in the world, and then how do we innovate on those?
And please, if you could give the listener some background on blockchain and how you got into blockchain, why you got into it, and just tell us a little bit about your journey in the last few years, and especially going into 2020, where we've seen with the pandemic, so much change and disruption happening.
Yeah, so I've been, a serial entrepreneur my entire life, and actually before blockchain and crypto, I had a pretty successful business in regenerative medicine, anti-aging medicine, and was really, really excited about passionate about that, and I still am. Like I would love to see medicine, get to a point where we, can essentially live for a very, 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 very long time. And I loved doing what I was doing. And then I had already kind of known about Bitcoin in 2012, and that's about the same time of this business. But then as I started to learn more about it, and then as I saw the WikiLeaks thing where, basically, Julian Assange from WikiLeaks, if you guys don't know the story, his first big break for WikiLeaks was releasing all of these classified documents from the United States. And they tried to stop. It's a nonprofit. They were running on donations, and so eventually, when they started leaking these documents, everybody like PayPal, MasterCard, Visa, Western Union, all the banks, they all pressured or basically stopped allowing donations to go to Julian Assange at WikiLeaks, and they had no way to receive money. And so then someone said, "Hey, try Bitcoin," and they did, and then money started flowing in again, and they can continue operations. And this is the first time where we were able to see like circumvention of this centralized kind of control that has always been able to kind of, suffocate out really disruptive types of things like this. That was a big eye opener to me. And I've always been, from like probably like a very young age, someone who kind of questioned the systems that we were growing up in and things like that. I also, never voted as an American citizen, which a lot of people would think that was asinine. But, for me, a lot of things just seemed like a big facade, a big, and I really kind of was frustrated by things being an American, traveling around the world, seeing all the privilege that we had and others didn't. And then just the fact that everything seemed like a big scam to me. But I had felt powerless until I discovered Bitcoin. And that was incredibly empowering. And I felt like this is what I should dedicate my life to. And it was helping because I thought that the world was a pretty unjust place. Sure, like we were extremely privileged growing up in America and a nice family and things like that. But, a lot of the world isn't. And I don't think that's right. So yeah, I dove into it full time in 2013. Started building projects. I built the world's first Bitcoin-based lottery in 2013 called World Super Lotto. It was a really fun project. It was a bit too early at the time for adoption, but it was fun nonetheless. And then ever since then, like I also gave up all my fiats for Bitcoin in 2013, and then started diversifying the appreciation from Bitcoin into Ethereum and other infrastructure projects like exchanges and wallets and protocols and things like that. So I've made a ton of investments, and then started advising projects in 2018. And in 2019, Master Ventures pivoted to a venture studio model where now we're kind of building our own projects in-house, infrastructure projects, and really disruptive types of projects.
Going into 2020, I guess, how is the world changing? You started many years ago, but do you feel that things are starting to really come to fruition now? Is the timing right for blockchain mass adoption?
Yeah, I think that, I mean, I wouldn't have seen the things evolving this way. Like those of us who were in Bitcoin and crypto before, I would say before 2017, or for sure like 2016 or before, almost everybody I knew was in it because they wanted to be part of this revolution. We didn't really think back then about institutional adoption at all. Like it wasn't a thought that we would need institutional adoption in order for full like global adoption. But it seems like that is what has been happening for the past 4 years or something. Is infrastructure has been built up, regulation has come in place, and at some point, governments and banks decided that, like, hey, we can't beat this, so we might as well regulate it and try to get a handle on this.
Right.
And that has pros and cons. The pros is that, like, it allows for adoption on and discovery. So when you have announcements like PayPal this year, integrating Bitcoin, that is a really bullish piece of news, and it allows what PayPal is. And PayPal has this news about PayPal is like mixed feedback from the community. Some people, because what PayPal is doing is they're not creating like a simple wallet, like a normal cryptocurrency wallet. They're creating basically a integrating into their payment systems. But it's some would argue that this is not true, like in the true spirit of cryptocurrency, because anybody that really believes in like the ethos of Bitcoin will tell you, not your keys, not your crypto. Basically, if you don't own the private keys of your Bitcoin, you don't own the Bitcoin, and therefore it's not like the ethos. But there's a lot of people there with a big barrier to entry of obtaining Bitcoin or participating in it because they're so timid by the steps that are involved to create your own wallet, to own your own keys and be responsible to hold your own crypto. So I don't necessarily agree that what PayPal is doing is like not in the ethos. I'm okay with it. You don't have to use PayPal if you don't want to for your Bitcoin transactions, but for all of those hundreds of millions of people out there that do use PayPal and don't want to go through the headache of learning how to be responsible with their own Bitcoin, can now use it in a grandma-friendly setting. And I think that's really important for adoption, and what that'll do is that'll cause, and with all this institutions buying in and holding it as a reserve, like Michael Saylor and like Square and all these guys, that just causes more and more people to buy in. No matter what it is, it takes Bitcoin off of the open market, and it limits the circulating supply, which will increase the price, which drives awareness. So in 2017, when we saw Bitcoin approaching 20K, Bitcoin was on all the news, and everybody was aware of it, and it put on everyone's radar. And even though it's Bitcoin's really interesting, and crypto is really interesting in the way that And I think this is one of the things you wanted to get into in a bit was token economics, but um, really, like a lot of like there's this kind of people that say, I'm not in it for the money, but it's built to incentivize people based out of our own human greed. So the more that you participate in the network, the more greedy you are, the more work that you're doing for the network, the more it secures it, the more. So part of adoption is price increase, and that incentivizes more people to join in, more excitement, more awareness, things like that. So I think everything that's happening on institutional adoption level is very good for Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies.
Great. So things are really, moving along very, very quickly. It couldn't be really better in my mind, and I see what you're doing and the things that you're launching this year. It's just so bullish at the moment overall. For the regular listener who's thinking, okay, blockchain, what is that? Why is it important? How would you explain blockchain to the average person on the street, or a professional in a company who's heard it a few times and might have known that it's something important, but really doesn't really understand the use case or how it's about to change the world, pretty much?
Yeah, it's a hard question to answer in a short amount of time. But I think what I like to focus on when people say blockchain, we're really talking about potentially two different things. You're talking about enterprise blockchain, which is private permission blockchain, which is basically a way to distribute some type of database. It doesn't necessarily need to be public. It's not necessarily distributed amongst public. It's basically a more advanced version of QuickBooks.
Right.
Now, what I'm interested in, and what I think is really groundbreaking is open public blockchain like Bitcoin and other infrastructure projects that are being built. And what this is it gives us a way to create systems like a currency, for example, like Bitcoin, that isn't governed or controlled by anybody, that is basically built on code and allows and basically it's an unstoppable. It's permissionless, meaning that and it's peer-to-peer. So much like people watching this show are going to be tech savvy, so people will understand like torrents, so P2P file sharing. But the difference is, like in torrents, you can just copy any type of digital file that you want to share. There's no way to authenticate the validity of that. So I would say something like Bitcoin and blockchain is kind of like a mix between being able to cryptographically authenticate some type of asset, whether it would be and I'm going down a little bit of sidetrack here, but if you want it, like in crypto and blockchain, you could actually do something like, if you create a piece of art, so you could authenticate that was the original piece of art, for example. But that's a bit of I digress a bit. So yeah, so it's basically a mix of torrent sharing, like BitTorrent or torrent sharing, file sharing on a peer-to-peer network, but also creating an asset that is able to be you can't counterfeit it or you can't copy it, and
Right.
that is secured by encryption. So the best and most well-known use case is Bitcoin, and there's no way that you can counterfeit, produce any more, mint any more.
Right.
A Bitcoin. So it's that's the way to describe it, I guess.
Yeah, I think that's really interesting. I think what you're referring to is NFTs, right? Non-fungible tokens. Yeah, perhaps we can touch on that in a moment. But I think you're leading on to a really interesting point there, is looking at our financial system. And you mentioned in the beginning how we're moving away from traditional finance into more modern money market theory. And could you speak to that a bit more in terms of how blockchain is going to enable a new monetary system? Because I really feel like this is the shakeup that's coming our way now, coming out of the pandemic.
Yep.
Yeah.
So, like our traditional monetary systems have been based on debt, and this is probably. I just had this conversation yesterday with a friend of mine, a VC, and we were both kind of motivated by the same reasons to get involved in Bitcoin, and it's because we understood the monetary system of Federal Reserve and central banks. It is a complete con big fraud system. Basically, if any of you, real quick, if you don't understand how that works, the Federal Reserve, for example, is a private entity. And when the government needs, let's say, $1, the Fed prints $1, gives it to the government, and the government now says, okay, now you owe me $1.02. But if that government only got $1, where did the 2 cents come from that they have to pay back the Federal Reserve? So it's a system built on debt that we can never get our way out of. Never, ever, ever. It's impossible. People are like, how are we going to pay off the debt? We can't. It's impossible. So it's a system built in debt, and Bitcoin doesn't have debt. There's DeFi tools that are being built for lending and borrowing, but you have to collateralize. So there's no debt in the system whatsoever. And debt has been a tool used to basically enslave people into forever, and it's a way that companies and corporations have really taken advantage of your average person to constantly make sure that they're always in debt and always paying off debt and that's something that was instilled to us from very, very young. It was expected that as soon as you were turned 18, you can get like credit cards and student loans. And before you even like have stepped out into the real world, you've just been growing up at your parents' house and going to school. Next thing you know, it's just a standard for you to go to university or something and then get yourself into hundreds of thousands of dollars of debt plus some credit card debt. Right. And then you graduate school and you have to go be like an intern somewhere or something. And next thing you know, you're working for hardly paying your rent and you have this tremendous amount of debt you have to pay off. That system is time to go, I think. And so we can, build a new system with the different monetary policies and theories based off of blockchain. And people are doing all kinds of different interesting things with it's not just Bitcoin, but people are creating different ones like stable coins or like elastic supply currencies like Ampleforth, for example, or really, really awesome innovation happening right now in this space.
Yeah, and I'd love to talk about more of the upside in terms of from a learning and development standpoint towards the end of this episode. What the listener, if they're interested in blockchain and maybe starting out a career or maybe transitioning into blockchain for the long term, then love to get your thoughts at the end on how to do that and what's hot.
Yeah, in case we don't make it to that section, I just want to say, like, if there's anybody listening, the best thing, in my opinion, that you could do with your life would be to go full time in crypto. Like it is an amazing opportunity. It's the fastest growing industry in the world, I think, as far as like LinkedIn is concerned. And there's so many opportunities, tremendous amount of opportunities. Yeah, and one more thing on that too is it's like you don't have to. What's really cool too is like you don't have to even necessarily be a fan of the tech. I give this example all the time. Let's say that you want to go to law school and be an attorney. Traditionally after you go to university to be a lawyer, you graduate with your law degree, and then you have to go to some huge law firm, become an intern with all your student debt. You're an intern for like 2 years. And then you graduate to becoming like a junior associate for like many more years. And then after that, you graduate to being an associate. And then, by the time you're 40, 45, something like that, you become a junior partner, and then you're a senior partner finally. Then you start making good money. But then you can start paying off all your debt and making good money, but your responsibility goes up through the roof. If you were to graduate, now let's take another example. Let's say that you went to law school to become an attorney. And you learned about kind of crypto law as your kind of first thesis or whatever. Mm-hmm. You could literally go to a crypto conference the day after you get your legal license, mm-hmm. and you could just start promoting yourself as a crypto attorney, and people are gonna be like, "Oh, I need your services," and you can start out your own. I know a few people who are like 24 years old and have their own crypto law firm, and they're doing great. And that's
insane.
You can do that if you're a photographer. You can go to conferences and take pictures of because it's such a new industry. If you like to throw parties, put on a conference, do an after party. If you like to, whatever, if you're an artist, totally crypto art, and it's all new, and there's a lot of room for people to get in, and you don't have to work your way up to the ranks forever because there's not a lot of competition.
Yeah, totally. And people think, blockchain, you have to be very technically minded, or you have to like technology, you have to be tech savvy, but no, right? It's completely the opposite, isn't it?
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, there's just every kind of job that that kind of existed previously, not everyone, but a lot of them, you can do it in this industry. And it's really fun and exciting. When you go to conferences or surround yourself by these type of people, everybody's very kind of the same mindset of like, let's make a change, let's make a difference. They're optimistic. They've got lots of energy. Everyone, it's a lot of fun.
Yeah,
A lot
and
of
I've heard in countries, I think it was on an Ivan on Tech live stream, he was talking about, like, you know, blockchain careers in blockchain is transforming developing countries, because as soon as they, you know, get going on the career path of blockchain, then they're working like globally, and they're now earning
Yep,
global salaries. So could you
absolutely.
talk a bit more to, you know, what it's like to work in the industry, and what kind of skills you need?
Absolutely. Like, I think like, yeah, you know, there's a lot of third world countries that where the average salary might be hundreds of dollars a month.
Mm,
And if you spend, if you have access to a computer and you teach yourself Solidity, for example, which is the coding language for Ethereum,
hmm.
and you become pretty proficient in that, all of a sudden your minimum salary becomes something like $3,000 a month. And
Wow,
so that you're talking about, you
mind
know,
blowing.
10, you know, 5, 10x
10x
the normal
immediately.
salary.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, that's insane.
Yeah.
And plus, you're working globally, so
Yes.
you're interacting with other cultures, and you're building like a global network, a support network,
Yeah.
hopefully.
Yeah. I would say that it's important also at the same time, like learn English, and then if you can communicate with anybody in the world, and you're able to, you know, participate in the industry, then you have a really good opportunity from anywhere in the world
Mhm.
to make a big difference for your life and your family's life.
That's awesome. You know, you're talking about tokenomics, for example. I think maybe we can focus on tokenomics and blockchain. How does that help us to create this a sustainable system whereby we are moving into kind of a new monetary system based on kind of digitally hard assets rather than like fiat currency and the old way of the old traditional banking way?
The difference between what we talked about earlier, enterprise or private blockchain versus public blockchain, is
Mhm.
in public blockchain, you absolutely have to have a token, right? You have to have a unit of account and an incentive structure, because
Mhm.
like in Bitcoin, for example, what secures a Bitcoin network are miners. And node operators, and nobody would volunteer to go buy equipment and spend their electricity costs if there wasn't
Right.
incentive. So
Yeah.
Bitcoin not only acts as just a peer-to-peer currency, but it's also the reward mechanism for securing the network. And so what's really interesting about decentralized systems, blockchain, um, is you create an ecosystem that that token of, or the unit of accounts within that blockchain becomes the incentive mechanism for people to secure it, and that's what keeps the system going. So token economics are extremely important, and token economics are just, for anybody who doesn't understand what that means, that is the economic and monetary and fiscal policy, because you can think of a blockchain somewhat like a micronation. You're creating a nation. You're talking about governance, taxation, jobs, everything that you would need in a nation. You're creating in a token economic model. So you have to think about all of these things. You have to think
Mhm.
about treasury management, governance, you know, advertising, marketing, things like that.
Voting, and
Voting.
all
Yep.
kinds of rules and criteria and
Yep.
systems.
Yeah. So
Cool.
it's so and it gets really fun to build these models out and see, you know,
Yeah.
and right now it's a lot of theory. There's no right way or wrong way to, well, there's tons of wrong ways, I guess, to do it. Like, but we don't know
Sure.
what the right way is yet, because nothing has really been massively adopted.
Right.
And Bitcoin is a relatively simple form of a blockchain. You know, it has basically one purpose, which is, you know, either a store of value or a peer-to-peer currency, depending on who you ask. But when you get into what Ethereum created, which is like smart contracts, which is a
Mhm.
lot, which allows you to create different types of use cases, that really allows, it takes what Bitcoin did and innovates upon it in order for us to build other types of disruptive systems. Like an example that I use often is Uber, that a
Mhm.
decentralized version of Uber, because basically, you know, nobody calls Uber customer service or something. It's not really necessary. But where Uber takes, I think, something like 30% of the profit from every ride that is taken. So let's say that you need to get from your house to the airport, and your house to the airport, and in Uber it costs $100.
Mhm.
Um, the driver keeps 70, Uber takes 30.
Right.
Let's call it decentralized version Duber, for example. So
Mm-hmm.
the service would look exactly the same. You would open up your Duber or Uber app. You would say, I need to go to the airport. But the difference is, because there's no central entity taking profit out,
Mm-hmm.
the ride from my house to the airport in Duber might cost $79. The driver keeps 70, or sorry, might cost $80. The
Mm-hmm.
driver keeps $79, and $1 goes to the people who are securing the network, the nodes, the
Right.
miners, or the consensus, the government taxes for the network, for the operators or the founders, whatever. So in this decentralized version, you've removed the middleman who takes all the profit, and now it's better value for the driver because they make more money for the exact same job that they did,
Mm-hmm.
and the customer pays a lot less money for the exact same service that they would have gotten from Uber. There's literally no difference, but you've removed that central entity taking all the profit, and you've given more value to both parties that are involved.
Right. That's really insightful. So for the listeners, just to summarize for the listeners' benefit, so that we have centralized systems and we have decentralized systems. So you're saying the world has to move towards a it's an imperative, is it, that we have to move towards a decentralized economy, in your opinion?
I think that I don't. I think like a full move to a decent is possible,
Mm-hmm.
but I think it's a very, very, very long way out before we're
Right.
fully there. There's two, like when you look at a country like United States or China,
Mm-hmm.
any of the big economies, like the people who run those countries are really happy with the way the things work. They're really happy with
Sure.
the Federal Reserve. They're really happy with taxes. They're really
Printing
happy.
money. Yeah.
They're really happy with lobbying. You know, they
Yeah.
love all these things, and
Sure.
it's going to be really hard for that system to be broken down. But I do think like Bitcoin's approach isn't that we want to force people to use it. It's like,
Right.
hey, I'm here as an alternative, and if you want to use this, go ahead and do that. And that's the path I imagine that, let's say that Duber exists tomorrow, and
Mm-hmm.
you need to get from your house to the airport, and you open up an app that looks at all ride sharing services and now includes Duber, Lyft, and Uber, and
Mm-hmm.
Grab, whatever. I mean, Duber is going to be the best option. And so people that will organically have adoption because it's a better service, it's more efficient, and it's the exact same service as before. So I think that, as you know, one of the goals that we have is really to help support all of these systems that are creating more efficient systems. And when the user experience becomes identical to the centralized counterpart, it'll be more efficient and people will choose those options.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's really interesting. And maybe I forgot to ask you, but I'm based in Vietnam. What do you know of Vietnam? Have you been to Vietnam? And what do you see what do you see here in terms of the future of, blockchain? Because as you know, like there's a lot of tech in Vietnam. Tech's very heavy. And I personally see a huge future here in Vietnam. How about you?
I mean, last time I went to Vietnam was 2004. And
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and
Wow.
I heard
Different place back then.
I heard it has dramatically changed since then. So
well, you just live next door. Yeah.
I
Hope
know,
to see
man.
you soon.
I know. You know, like I lived in Thailand for 3 years, and
Yeah.
since the beginning of living here, I have, like pre-COVID, I was using this as home base, but I was constantly traveling around the world, speaking at different conferences, and I just, I went to a lot of countries for the first time during this conference tours, but Vietnam hasn't yet come up. And really right now, these days, like I'm not taking vacations, I'm building things. And so when I am traveling, it's traveling to destinations that have purpose. So it just hasn't been an option yet, but I would love to go back to Vietnam. I heard it's, changed dramatically. I'd love to see it. I've heard amazing things about development in Vietnam. Like I'd really like to explore that and see what kind of the development community is like. Digital nomads. I think it's still a better bang for your buck than Thailand is right now. And I do know like the best, the most prominent project I know out of Vietnam is Kardiachain. I did a video on that, and I think it's an amazing project with an amazing team they already have so much real world adoption and use cases. And so I'm extremely bullish on Kardiachain. I did the video about it on my channel, and that's all I really know about Vietnam.
Because most of my listeners are in Vietnam, so I'd love to hear some examples of what Vietnam, with Kardiachain, for example, what they're building right now. Some real tangible examples. Do you have any?
Yeah, I mean, so Kardiachain is basically building like a layer 1 protocol, which would compete with something like Ethereum, but it doesn't have to compete with Ethereum because they're building like interoperability with Ethereum and other protocols. They have some really incredible tech, and from an adoption perspective, I know that they're working with governments and school systems. I know that they partnered with the largest mobile telecom company in Vietnam, and also the
Viettel, I think.
Viettel, yes. And then what's the largest taxi company, or the only taxi company?
MyLing.
So they partnered with them already. So now you can use your Kai to top up your phone, or you can use it to pay for your taxi rides, which is awesome. And they're doing a lot more. I think there's even been quite a bit more news since I made my video. But yeah.
And it's all on the blockchain.
It's all on their blockchain that they built from scratch.
Where would you kind of direct people to if they're hot on this kind of tech, interoperability, as you mentioned, there's these kind of enterprise blockchain solutions? Like, how can people learn more about that?
Yeah, it's taking your step into crypto to learn about it can be a daunting task. There's so much information out there.
Yeah, exactly.
I always recommend to people, if you want to learn about crypto, don't just kind of throw yourself in on some YouTube and start Googling Bitcoin or what is crypto, whatever. I mean, you can do that for your very high level first time introduction, but what I recommend is going to something like blockgeeks.com, which is a good friend of mine, Amir Rosik's platform. Cool. It's what or like Ivan on Tech's Academy.
Yeah, I would recommend that.
Yeah, you got to go to somewhere that has like a structure, just like the education system from A to Z. Because what you would end up doing if you don't go to one of these sites is you will end up hearing the same every time you watch a 30-minute video, maybe 25 minutes of it you heard from the last video, and maybe you get a little bit of new knowledge, but you end up hearing the same thing over and over again, or you might get misinformation from somewhere as well, which doesn't help anybody. So that's what I help. And for anybody like in Vietnam who's interested about Kardiachain, and by the way, like, just so anyone's clear, like, I'm not affiliated with them or anything like that. No sponsorship. I just am a big fan of the project.
Right.
But I think one of the things that's interesting, for people, and something that I haven't mentioned yet, but it's very obvious to us, at least, that are in the space, like, it's giving people, you have an opportunity. If you think something, like, I think that Kardiachain will be a big, and there's a lot of other projects out there too, but I think that they will be massive, equivalents of things like Google and things like the Apple, like the whatever it's called, App Store and the Play Store, where they will have this huge ecosystem of different use cases involved in them. And so if you're in Vietnam and, and you're interested about Kardiachain, like, start using it to, just get some to start using it for your taxis and your cell phones, and and maybe even start picking some extra up and putting it as a savings account, because you have an opportunity for something like this to grow 100, 200x in value over the next 2 to 5 years. And that can dramatically change somebody's life, dramatically, especially when you're talking, I mean, anybody in any country. If you make an investment and it goes up 100, 200x, which is what is possible with these things. They're very new. Yeah. And so if you can use it in your everyday utility already anyway, and then just start allocating a little bit of your savings or something to it, I think that's a good way to
Huge upside. So 2 websites there, blockgeeks.com. You and your friend founded that website?
Not me. No, just my friend Amir. Yeah.
Right. Okay. And Ivan on Tech as well. I'll leave the websites in the show notes. So we're getting towards the end of this episode, but I would like to ask you more about what you're doing at Master Ventures out in Koh Phangan, and how people can what they can expect from you in the future, and maybe get involved from an investing standpoint or kind of a collaborative standpoint. Yeah.
We have at Master Ventures, there's really 2 projects that we're working on right now, and they're very different. so House of DAO is one of them, which is
Mhm.
like something that I have been really, really passionate about for a long time, like 7,
Yeah.
8 years, something I've been dreaming about. And that what that is it's you know, it's like a crypto blockchain emerging technology co-working co-living village where the goal is really for people to actually, and our goal is also to have 20 or 30 of these things around the world in the coolest places, like
Yeah.
in Copenhagen, Thailand, and
Vietnam,
Vietnam, and
maybe?
yeah, in Vietnam and Philippines and Colombia, wherever,
Great.
you know, in the Bahamas, Caribbean, whatever. Somewhere in the snow so you can go snowboarding or skiing, blah, blah. And the idea is that, you know, as we become more and more nomadic, you know, I certainly don't like the idea of having to live in one house for the rest of my life. That
Oh,
seems
definitely.
incredibly boring to me.
Me too.
I like to travel and explore the world. And as we're starting to
Yeah.
work more and more from laptops and have
Yeah.
online based businesses, we have the freedom to do that. So
Yeah.
so what House of DAO would create is like an ecosystem, a community like environment where you're surrounded by like-minded individuals and you can come and bounce around at all these House of DAO locations in the coolest places in the world. And also it's like being at a conference the whole time
Yeah.
because it's a really powerful network that you're surrounded by all these people.
Yeah.
And House of DAO will also be incubating projects. We'll be doing like hackathons and incubating, accelerating projects, investing in projects. And the whole thing is really creating an environment like a micronation that's
Totally.
self-sustaining. And hopefully we have to have families that are growing up there with like redoing the education
Yeah.
system, redoing everything.
Possibly a token as well coming up.
Yeah, yeah, probably. We have to because it'll be a
Have
DAO
to.
it'll be a DAO structure, of course, with governance. So you have to have the token
That's
eventually.
awesome.
And then the other one is called Paid Network, which is basically redoing the entire. This is something that we're just starting raising money for right now. It's an amazing use case. It's basically, you know, making the whole process of doing business agreements, litigating those business agreements if there's disputes, and getting paid on those agreements, which is something almost impossible to do today.
Right.
You know, I've been an entrepreneur for 20 years, and there's been a handful of cases when someone was a bad actor on their side. And I tried to go after them in court, and it made it it's almost impossible. You have to hire an expensive attorney.
Yeah.
It takes months or years to litigate these things, and then
Yeah.
even if you win, getting paid on them is damn near impossible. And so we're using a decentralized system and some DeFi tools and community governance and things like that in order to you know, make this a much better system.
I'm very bullish on that, and I think that will bring so much peace of mind to the future of business for people, not only just starting out in the business world, but also currently, you know, for all types of size of enterprises, looking for peace of mind when they work with you know, partner with other companies and things like that. That's super great. What are some things that you're excited about, that you really want to motivate someone into this space?
I think that we're you know, 2017 was really fun. If you were involved in crypto in 2017, it was a party every single day, everywhere you were. Everyone went from poor to rich. People were buying Lambos. There was parties everywhere. It was a fun time to be alive, and it was a fun time to be in the space. And right now feels very 2016. So, you know, I would say that like it is a very, very good time if you're not involved in the space for nothing else other than to experience what it's like to go through all this euphoria and massive bull cycle where, you know, everybody is in a good mood all the time. You know, we've been in a long bear market, you know, for the last 2.5 years, and it's been hard. You know, it's been hard.
There.
A lot of projects have fallen out of the space. People left crypto. A lot of us have been building the whole time, but I think that, you know, I'm really looking forward to that because I've been through several cycles in my almost 9 years in the space, and but this next one is going to be huge. You're starting to have institutional FOMO. You know, basically, you're every 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 days, we're getting a news of another publicly traded company that's you know, cashing out their reserves into Bitcoin. And that's not going to stop anytime soon. And people have to realize there's a very limited supply of Bitcoin on this planet. It'll be a game of musical chairs soon, where everyone's just grabbing the last bit of Bitcoin possible, and that's going to spike the price through the roof, and that'll create a lot of awareness around the world.
Thank you so much, Carl. It's been a pleasure to have you on. I really appreciate your time, and I really hope to meet you in Vietnam, and perhaps I can get together some people and meet you in Vietnam and help you to expand here. That'd be awesome.
Yeah, come down and visit House of DAO in Thailand.
You bet I will. That's definitely in the cards for next year if we get rid of this pandemic situation. So
yeah.
Great. All the best.
Okay. Thanks, Dave. Appreciate it. Have a
You
good
too, buddy.
day.
You
Cheers.
too. Cheers. Cheers. Bye-bye.
Bye.